evening. Welcome everyone who's here in person and those who are joining online. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting here at Frederick School, Wednesday, June 7th at 6:30 p.m. Can I get a call to order and a roll call, please?
Braden,
Here.
Nash,
Present.
Albert,
Here.
LaCroix,
Here.
and Weedman.
Here.
Great, that establishes our quorum. Will you join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda, including the personnel
I'll move.
report that we received earlier?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Great. Do we have any public comments? We do not? Okay. Let's get to the recognition.
Okay, that'd be me.
Come on up.
I don't think I have to introduce myself. Oh, I'm microphone.
You gotta be on the microphone because we're on the video. Yep.
I don't like microphones.
So I am very pleased to be here once again. Oh, it's not on? Oh,
We're going to get it all together eventually.
Is it red?
it's red. Yeah. It's on? Yeah. Hello, hello. There we go. Okay. So I'm very pleased again to be joining you once again to celebrate another amazing group of students and coaches. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth Effa, our track coach over at GMS.
Okay. God, I do not like microphones. Am I loud enough? Because I'm loud. So anyway, track and field 2023. I have a few pictures to share with you. Next one. Thank you for celebrating our track team. These are just a bunch of different pictures from different meets and a bunch of our medal winners. Let's go. Again, these are different pictures of our medal winners and ribbon winners at different meets we had throughout the season. One more. Okay, but what I also tell, we have a lot of kids. We had about 170 track athletes. Approximately 40 of them do come from Frederick. Our Frederick kiddos mostly just run our 1600 and 800. They come over for cross country also, and we do love having them and giving this the opportunity. The aforementioned pictures, we've had a lot of them, and they showed that they were our ribbon winners, our medal winners at different events that we had throughout the season. But I want to remind all our athletes and staff that not all champions earn ribbons or wear medals. They are all champions, and we all consider them as such. So, and that is our 2023. Oh my God, I almost went back to my own year. Our 2023 track team. Very proud of them. They are so fun and energetic, and I'm like, whoa. All right, let me see what, like another picture I maybe have in there. Okay, so, I gotta stay here, don't I? Okay. So, let me think. I didn't have a speech picked out in front of a microphone. So, not all our state qualifiers were able to attend tonight's presentation because of various, other commitments and stuff. But there are a few of us here, and so I do want to talk about each of them. And I also would like to talk about our coaching staff. But I will start with, we took 5 events to the state meet this year. And the first one I am going to talk about is the 4x2 100-meter relay. We had Evan, Brejan, who are not with us, but we have Kenyi and Ryan. Stand, just so they know which two are Kenyi and Ryan. Okay, and now, Will, this is Will too. Will, you stand. Now turn around. Turn around. So these are the events in which they qualified for the state meet. So now you can, thanks guys. So in determining our 4x2 team, we worked a bunch of different like combos and stuff, and we ended up with Evan, Brejan, Ryan, Kenyi, and Cody was their alternate. And the alternate is an extremely, extremely important part of the team, right guys? Because if you don't have an alternate, you don't have a team. So we started off the season with a 5th place and a time of 1:53.25 at Ross Gant. And then they went down to a 1:43, 1:53, 1:43, and 2nd place in the conference. And then at sectional, they hit 1:42.75, 2nd place, but it was a qualifying time for the state meet. So they got to go downstate. And their state time was 1:42.62. They cut off some more time. But they were only, no, that's not what I wanted to say, I forget. Sorry. But they placed 25th out of 37 teams. And they are the present holders of our school record, beating the previous one in 2018 by 3 seconds, 3 29/100ths of a second. And as we all know, in track, seconds counts. I'm sorry, I'm just like, whoa. Anybody else want to talk? No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we also took our 4x4 relay team, and this was Reed and Shane, he's not here, Ryan, again, Ryan, and Brejan. And again, with our 4x4, we tried a few different people, but pretty early on, we did get this team mixed together. And they the team itself started off as a 4:18, 4 minutes and 18 at the Ross Gant. They went down to 4:04 at conference. Now, we went a little up at sectional, but not too bad. It's okay. They went up to 4:05, but it was only like, I don't know, 89/100ths of a second. And then they ran a 4 minute and 1 62/100ths of a time at state. So that's like amazing. And again, they now hold the record for our school. All right, so that's 2 records, 2 up, 2 down. All right. So Kenyi went to state for the 200-meter dash also. Kenyi qualified last year for the 200-meter dash. He did come in 2nd in the sectional last year, but he beat that qualifying time. You know, when you're in track, you just run for the prize. You run for the prize. You don't look at anybody. You run for the prize because 2nd place sometimes gets to go. So anyway, he beat the qualifying time then, and his time last year as a 7th grader was 25:84. So in the conference, he ran a 24:83. 1 second. But you guys, whoa, 1 second. It really makes a difference. And then sectional, he got 1st place with a 24:02. So he went down. Again, he's got a school record. Oh, wait, no, not in that one, the next one, sorry. But in the state meet, the first 8 runners, or the first 8 people get medals. Our guys were like 21, I think. But if you look at from 9th place to 29th place. 1 second elapsed. 1 second. And though they were 21st out of the group, 1 second for 20 teams. That's like amazing. But I knew they could do it. And then Kenyi, did you wear your medal? All right. Kenyi actually qualified. He was second in conference with a jump of 18. Oh, this is long jump. I'm all over the table. I like to do puzzles. With a jump of 17 feet, 10 inches. Oh, wait, was that right? Ross Gant. Yeah, Ross Gant. That was his first one. That's where he started the season at. I didn't put that in my notes. And then 18.4 is what he jumped at conference. And he went up to 18.675 or 6.75 in sectional, first place, which I think he beat the other guy by like a little bit, like a quarter inch. So anyway, he did end up 5th in the state with a school record of 20 feet 1 inch. Although he did get 5th, he's kind of 4th. He and the 4th place person did have the 20 feet 1 inch, but the other guy had a better second jump. Darn. So Kenyi ended up with the 5th place, but we don't care. We're okay. And then there's Will. Will was, Will's our 7th grader, so we get Will back. Will is one of those kids that's, well, they all are very athletic, but Will's one of those kids that just, well, I'm just going to be a runner. No, I want to do relays. I'm going to high jump. Well, maybe I'll throw. Yeah. And I'm like, what do you want to do? Because we really encouraged them to try everything. And we had a great start this year, and we got the kids really doing a lot of different modes of track. So I don't know, it's like 3 weeks into the season, and Will comes down to the throwing area. And I'm like the throwing coach, but maybe I'm the throwing moderator. I know some things, but the kids are awesome. But Will decides to come down, and, he's like, oh, okay. Throws the disc. I didn't even show him. He just threw the disc, and I'm like, yeah, this is your calling. I mean, you need to be here. And he's like, well, yeah, but I got to do other things, too. I said, fine, but you come back, okay? So he did, and he was really a good sport about it, and really with little or no effort. He threw 66 feet 6 inches his first time out. He was first in conference, and he threw 74 feet 5 inches. And then he went to sectional, and his dad, God love him, taught him how to spin because I can't spin. And Will threw 104 feet. He increased 30 feet. I got there a little late for the sectional meet. I had something going on, and he came and he told me, he won. And I was like, whoa. I mean, not, but whoa, okay, cool, And he said, yeah, I think it was 104 feet. I'm like, Will, it was 70, that's 30 feet. So he had a little tougher time at state, but he persevered. He kept in it, and he just kept throwing, and he did it. But we're going to get him back there next year, and we're going to get him, yep, he'll be back. He'll be back for us. And the other guys, they're going to do great at either our North or Central High School. They are very talented, good kids. They listen good to instructions. They listen to their coaches. They have information that they share with us, and we are all really proud of them. So, but if I do have a few more minutes, I'm sorry, I don't mean to. If I have a few more minutes, I would like the opportunity to share with you our coaching staff, because the coaching staff is like totally amazing. You guys, the district has been gifted with the coaching staff this year. Now you got me, and you know me. And I'm okay. I'm a good organizer overall, make sure everything's ready and good meat setter-upper. And I know about track. I mean, I know the umbrella, but really throwing that disc, I'm doing okay. But I have Kelly Pendleton and Amber Bauman, and Kelly's husband, Ken. They are all D1 athletes. We're all D1 athletes. They, the knowledge that they bring, Kelly was in jumping and sprints. Her husband, I don't know, I think he was in a lot of different areas. Amber was also a, I hope I get this right, an Olympic marathon qualifier person. So she's coached all over in a lot of places and stuff, and she brings an amazing amount of stuff to the team. And we have Matt Peterson, who's a trainer, or, I mean, I don't know your whole line, but he brings a lot of knowledge. I know he's an athletic trainer, he trains people. He's gonna try to train me, I'm not sure how that's gonna work out. But he's awesome. And then we have a couple other fellow teachers whose dedication and support and encouragement for the kids is just amazing. Yeah, you think 170 kids, it's like, whoa, really? 100? But it worked. It worked really great. And I think the kids had a good time. I hope they did, and I hope they still come back out. And one final thing, a little wish list. If the board ever has any monies or something, there's two things we could really use. Now, one's already started. We got a long jump pit that's there. It's really good. Well, it's a nice long jump pit. But if we could get the little rototiller over there and some new sand, we'd be kicking up a little bit more. It'd be awesome. And the other thing that I'm kind of looking for, but I think would be a lot harder for us to try to include, but our throwers. If we could get a concrete circle for our throwers, for the disc and shot put people, because we practice on grass a lot, and it just doesn't do it justice. You can't spin on the grass. And these kids, as I found out with Will, they are ready to learn to spin. And I can kind of show them, but I need concrete. I can't do it on grass. So that's just a little wish list from us, you know. What? Oh, well, that's in another, I'll take these two things to begin with. When we get, yeah. And hopefully we're gonna really try this next year to really work with the two high schools and see if we can't, you know, bring our, well, we could talk with the foundation thing. But anyway, I think that's all. So, thank you for your time. Oh, yeah, so there's our, here, so the guys that weren't here, there's our 4x2. We've got Rajan, who's first, Ryan, Kenny, and Evan. And then, can you go back, like, there's our 4x4 with Reed and Brajan and Shane and Ryan. And then, okay, and then we have Will. There's our long jumper and Kenny on 5. And Will throwing the disc. All right? Thank you. Thank you for letting me take up this time.
Students, we have a quick ribbon for you, so come on up.
Coach Heffa.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Thanks so much for that awesome update, and congratulations to the students. That's an amazing accomplishment. You all should feel extremely proud of yourselves. I can personally testify to the amazingness of you and your assistant coaches. having a runner as well, and just seeing how your kid comes alive and thrives when they're put in places where they can really just have that outlet and express themselves through athletics. And your last slide said track is not just about running, and you're so right, because I've seen my little closed up flower just really just open up and really find herself in confidence through track and cross country under you and your team's leadership. So I appreciate that so much. And you bring up your wish list at a good time. No promises, right? But we know that just as part of our strategic plan, right? We're currently looking with an architecture firm just to talk about all of our pie in the sky wishes. So maybe your wish comes true. Fingers crossed.
I'm just throwing it out there. Any, I think we could work on the long jump thing. Because that one will even work out. But anyway,
But you're appreciated. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you all.
I'd like to say a couple of words too. Congratulations and good job on your state performance. I do have a question for Coach F as well. So where do you guys practice on the track? Where do you guys get track time?
Oh, well, we don't have a track. No. But we make things work. Central Park is really nice, and the path, that works a lot, like our distance runs and things like that. The south end of the school, the lot between our building and the swimming pool, we use that a lot for our sprint relay stuff. The hurdles and long jump, we push out on the north side of the parking lot, which can be tricky at times because we have so many activities going on and, cars in and out. High jump, we do have a high jump pit that's inside, and depending if the other sports are done, we can use the gymnasium. Otherwise, we use the multi-purpose room. And our throwers, we go down by, I don't know, they're kind of like the batting cages, weren't they? Or, and they use them for golf, but they're kind of behind the school and down in the back. Because our sprinters and our relay teams work the south end of the field, that used to be a really good throwing spot because it's right there on at least the blacktop. But we can't really throw a disc when they're running up there.
I'm surprised to hear you're not saying, like, there's skills and techniques and things like the relay handoff that the first time your boys are doing these things is on a track that at a competition. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we just space them out in a, what did you say? In a straight line. Yeah, a straight line, but yeah, no. We're hoping to maybe work with the high school a little bit more, both high schools.
Yeah.
If we can.
That's right, with their track seasons, the premium time for them, they probably can't give up their space too much, right?
If they don't have track, you gotta see if lacrosse is on the field or soccer's on the field. If nobody's on the field, we could possibly use their track. We're gonna try to bring over maybe small groups. I mean, I'd like to take over the relay groups so that they can practice actually in their zones, and, because we kinda gotta fake, the changing lanes, the changing zones, stay, exchange zones, that's the word, thank you. We have to watch their exchange zones, and then sometimes too, the kids, our athletes, a lot of times is their first time into track, and especially our 5th and 6th graders who run, like the 1600 and the 800, and they don't understand the cut-in, when you can cut in the second lap, and you don't have to,
Stay in your lane.
change your lane, or the relay with the 4x4 relay, the second person can cut in. We explain that to them, but they're not actually looking at it on a track, and it's,
So you're learning on the fly sometimes at a competition.
yeah.
So is it normal for a grade school to have a track? I wouldn't think it is.
Well,
So I've been to some different places for other.
All the middle schools, and all the coaches have heard me say, why don't we have a track? The middle schools, McHenry, Johnsburg, Crystal Lake, he'd never practiced before a competition and was in a relay and he fractured his growth plate. Stepping on another student, I mean, it happens, it's part of it, but I equate it to playing volleyball without a net. That's what we're doing, that's our sport.
I think the only middle school track around this area that I've ever is the school down there on like after Kissick, Route 22. I can't think of the name of it. Longfellow. That's not right. We competed against them one year. I can't think of their name, and they have their own track, but it is a very wealthy district.
All right.
So.
Thank you.
Circle and long jump, it's a good stuff.
Thank you so much. We appreciate, I know that all of you have multiple commitments tonight, so thanks for being here. Really great to see you and to honor you and to honor the staff and the coaches as well. So most appreciated. As Dr. Glickman always says, we understand that you may not want to sit for the whole meeting, so you're welcome to get a picture and and continue your evening.
You're of course welcome to stay as well, but we would not, our feelings would not be hurt if you left.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. And Braylon's coming back. Thanks for being here. All right.
We are now moving to our presentation for the evening. We have with us tonight our state senator, Mary Adley Allen, who is fresh from spring session. Welcome back to District 46, Senator, and she's going to give us an update.
Thank you. I think it's on. It's really hard to hear that story and sit there in the audience and think, oh my goodness, this is my old stomping grounds, and these children don't have the basic needs of having a track team. So I think I came at the right evening to hear that story, and we'll see what we can do. No promises, but yeah, we can get a little creative. There's some capital funding in different places, but I think most of you know me as Ms. Allen, the ESL teacher under Dr. Diaz for many years. And as I was watching the presentation, there was a mention of the foundation. I'm not sure if you all are aware that I was one of the co-founders of the foundation with our legacy person, Jane Landers, who has since left the district. But that's a little bit of that back history. And then we started our diversity committee. How many years ago? We were at the forefront as the county, and the district was way in front of many other districts in the area, starting a foundation committee. So proud, I still carry the brochure around me in Springfield, and I'll say, we need to do this in every school district, because every child needs to feel welcomed and special and appreciated, valued, right? All of those words. So when I did show it to some leadership, they said, well, maybe we can just parse it down to one of those sentences. I was like, I'll take it, right? Small bites. But anyway, so I am your state senator for Grays Lake School District. I'm not sure if you all live in my district, My district starts at Libertyville, and it goes all the way north to Zion, and then goes west to Round Lake. So if you live in any of those districts or in any of those towns, I am your state senator. I think it's extremely important to have people who understand education making educational policy. What a concept. One of the unique perspectives that I was able to get was I served in the House, lost my reelection, came back. I was welcomed back to go teach again in the middle of COVID when everyone else was 6 months ahead of me. So I had to learn all of those tools that the amazing staff had learned to accommodate. And it was freaking hard. It gave me such a new perspective of what we were asking of our staff and what the administration had to go through to keep the schools open, to keep parents' fears at bay. And District 46 was just a leader and one of those districts that it appeared that it was seamless. I can only imagine what it was like, but it takes really strong leadership to weather that storm. And I was so impressed while I had my own frustrations of learning how to teach online because everybody else had already cried for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. You know, they were beyond me, but the appreciation for everything that all of you had done. And now serving in the Senate, I have that perspective of, do we really need to do this mandate? Like, do we really need to add this next layer to our administration and to our staff? I actually went to leadership and I said, I love yoga. I think yoga is really wonderful, but can we just hold off for a year? Like, can we just let everyone catch their breath, catch up until we add more things to the list? I don't know, is that okay with you all? I do, and and mental health, it's really, you all deal with it. We could use probably 4 or 5 times more social workers in every school. But yes, so I want you to know that I advocate for mostly the teachers, but I understand your administration, you need advocates too. But it's really important to have people who make policy that understand what you're actually doing. I've learned that theory and application can be a really wide gap. It's a really great idea. How are you going to do it? How are you going to fund it? What does it really look like? We need to be thoughtful in those ways. So, short briefing. I think you all know Governor. Maybe you don't know. Governor signed the budget today, so that's good news. He is committed to continually adding the $350 million into the evidence-based funding model. And District 46 does receive those fundings because, frankly, you have a really hard time generating money. I tried to explain how this whole structure works by a factor because people always compare Grays Lake to Libertyville. I'm like, no. If you need 10, you can only get to 10 either by 2 times 5 or 5 times 2 as a factor, right? So if you have a tax base of 5, you only have to charge 2 to your homeowner. But if you have a tax base of 2, which Grays Lake has, your homeowners have to pay 5 to get to 10. So the homeowners are really carrying that burden. And this isn't what I came to talk about. I'm just kind of wandering through, but this funding is extremely important for people to understand because I know that District 46 is very frugal. I've been there, been in the trenches with you all. And the funding mechanism that you all have is a little bit different than other school districts. Let's just face it. You don't have the tax base that Libertyville has. You drive down 21, you see those car dealerships. That's generating a lot of funding. An area that I would really like to look at, and I know this doesn't affect District 46, is TIFs. We are constantly giving TIF relief to big businesses. Walmart had a TIF. My opinion is if you're valued at over $250 billion, you don't necessarily need a tax break. Let's pay our moral obligation to our communities and to our schools. So I digress. Going back to the diversity committee, really proud to be part of that. I hope that we can emulate that throughout the entire district, because it's really important, especially today, that we protect our most vulnerable in our community. I wanted to talk about the $350 million. Oh, the teacher pipeline. There's a teacher pipeline grant. They put $45 million into that. So I hope that if you need help with that, and after hearing the track team, that's what I'm here for. I'm a helper. I'm your connection to the state. I'm here to serve my community. So ask me anything. I may not know, but I know who to go to get the questions answered. And it really is the story of who has the information. Whoever has the information has the power and then gets the things that they need. If you have capital requests, I know that Representative Favor Diaz, I think she came and already spoke. You had asked for some capital, and we received that. So we can talk offline about that, but that was really exciting information to get. And yeah, I'm here as a resource. If your teachers want me to come in and speak about civics or just power, legislative process, happy to do that. Yeah, I don't know if this is appropriate to have questions, or I'm used to just sitting in the audience and listening. But thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to come back at any time to answer questions or talk to you all. Oh, please, someone ask a question.
Sure. I actually have two for you. One, you mentioned you were going to explain a little more about the extra $350 million. I don't know if you had something more you were going to talk about that, or I know you said he put more into it, but was there a certain allocation for that, or is that just kind of going into?
Yeah, if you need your allocation, we can get that. Each of the districts are ranked in their need. I think you guys are at 66%.
Yeah, 66, 65.
You were at 61, I believe. I'm speaking off my memory, but yeah, that's still a long way to go.
Okay, and then probably for the last 4 or 5 years, we've put in for that property tax relief grant that is also in that package. For some reason, we keep getting knocked out of it, and yet we see our neighbor or our sister district in 127 continually be able to get it. Can you explain a little bit more about that, or why the reasons would be? Maybe you don't know, but maybe at least get back to us on it, of why 127, who seems to have a lot more funding than we do, and a better funding level than we do, and than us, who have far less coming in, to be able to give relief to the taxpayers that way.
Honestly, I can't speak to that specifically, but I'm happy to get the information and sit down with you all about that. I'm not familiar with what 127, I do know they went for a referendum a while back, and you all haven't. But I can find out for you. On me that I didn't ask you for questions prior to me coming, but this was really just to introduce myself, although most of you already know me. But really, truly, it's about access, and it's about information and learning how to ask. Miss Effa, Coach Effa, I have an ask now in my binder that I'm going to start to work on. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I'm sorry I'm not prepared to answer that question, but I'm certainly happy to find the answer.
Great, thank you.
You said you had 2 questions, was that it?
Okay.
Oh, and 350 is just the commitment that governor has made to always put in, and it can change from administration to administration. So it's just he values that, and he also he has coming up with the Smart Start with the early childhood, which is a whole nother lane.
Hello, Senator Allen. So I'm remembering you and being very nostalgic about our days back in Woodview when my kiddos were there. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
On winning your seat in the state. And then I wanted to revisit the comment that you made about wanting to review TIFs. to look at the tax breaks to those large companies? I believe you said like greater than 25 million in annual profits. Was that the number?
I was making kind of a snide comment that a company that's valued at 250 billion.
Oh, billion with the B.
Billion.
Okay.
And I understand that Grays Lake doesn't necessarily have
Well, right, that was my question.
any areas, like your downtown is a great example of where a TIF would be good because it's small business. But I know Round Lake had given a company up there that's valued at 250 billion.
Yeah. So that was my question. Like, how does a small commercial town like Grace Lake, right, like benefit from the review, the analysis, the outcomes coming from this work? And if it's not direct, what type of indirect benefits do you see that review process having on our community?
Well, two things, and I don't want to get into too far into the weeds about planning and the structure of how Grays Lake was developed, because it was intentional to have only rooftops here. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that it's really difficult to generate tax revenue from property tax revenue that funds your schools, not sales tax that has a totally separate lane. That the community needs to understand that there's no magic money, that if you don't have the industry and you don't have those businesses that can pay in, it's going to be on the backs of the homeowners. It's not that Grays Lake is spending more money, because frankly, I know that there were cuts made when I lived here in '06, and they haven't come back. The school day hasn't come back. There's a lot of things that you are all working without. You're working without a track. Some might say that's frivolous. I say that's basic. So the community was built the way it was built, so I don't have an answer to that per se. It's more just to educate the community, and you can't generate what you can't generate. And we can't compare ourselves to our neighbors that have a completely different dynamic. And, when I was a state rep, I represented a community down south, and when I went to the meetings with all the taxing bodies, the school district was suing the village because the village was putting in a TIF. And I'm sitting in the meeting and I'm thinking, do I say, like, why are you doing this? You have one bucket and you're using some of that bucket to sue your sister organization. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. So there is a really perfect example of what I see a lot of, where things are in silos. And we don't function in silos. We function interconnected. And your business community is part of your school community, part of your, you're all interconnected. So once we see each other as a whole unit, rather than I need this and make short-sighted decisions, yeah, I feel like I'm preaching now, but
the idea of having consortiums within our own, community and district boundaries and such. So you're speaking to my heart.
well,
so thank
good.
you so much.
Well, and I'm glad, and a perfect example is Zion. They have stakeholder meetings quarterly with all of their taxing bodies, and their community members are invited, and that's the time. If community has a solution to how we can better fund our schools, bring it on in. Let's start doing it. That's why we created the foundation, to give a creative way for businesses to help with our school district, because if you don't have that, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I really want to educate the community on how difficult and what of a challenge it is for District 46 to generate the funds that it needs. It's not that you don't want to, it's that you're just really almost unable because of how it was created here years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, my question's well, it's not really a question, maybe it is on a philosophical or fundamental level, but we're talking about funding our schools, and until we really divorce school funding from local property taxes, we're gonna have inequitable outcomes, right?
Right.
Is there any momentum, is there any hope on the horizon that we can change very fundamental idea of how we fund our schools? I know that's like the big rock that needs to be talked about and addressed, and we're kind of dibbling around the edges with everything else we're doing. Is there any momentum for anything fundamental and seismic in that way?
I guess I have my own thoughts, but I guess, do you have an idea of what a fundamental shift would be? Are you talking about like consolidating school districts or?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm
Okay.
talking about, the referendum that failed a couple cycles ago with the fair tax. Just, divorcing the funding mechanism from local property taxes to a statewide income tax type thing, or something that divorces the idea of the local sources of revenue and puts the onus back on the state where it belongs.
I agree with you. It does belong with the state. There's a few points. One is that, we all love our strong schools, and we know that strong schools correlate with really, high property values, and we want to protect that investment. You touched on an issue that might not be very popular, but is just, like you said, something that needs to be talked about. When I throw that out there about $250 billion, and I don't know if people understand the difference between a million and a billion. Like, if a million is here, a billion is the moon. It's so far, such a large amount. I can give you my own personal opinion, and I know I'm on the record, so it's out there, but we've steered so far away from our moral obligation to our communities, where you have a company that is valued at that much and is not paying into the coffers. That would alleviate it. My old district was the second wealthiest district in the, not school district, I represented, and it had 17 TIFs. And I know that doesn't help you, but that fair tax, or the tax, we should have called it tax relief for middle class, because that's what it was. When you have billionaires spending half as much as they would have spent in taxes to defeat something, that's tough. So that would have increased revenue, which could have helped the state pay their fair share, and then that would have alleviated the tax burden on the homeowner. It's not, I don't know if you know me, but I'm from Jersey, so I have an edge, so I say it's the way it is. And that's just the way it is. When you have really, really wealthy people that don't want to pay more, we have what we have. 5%, we have the flat tax, and the scare tactics of, they're going to raise your taxes. Well, the legislature can raise taxes now. We just have to take a vote. We have a supermajority in both chambers. We would get it done. But this idea that it's fair because everyone pays the same thing. 5% on $50,000 is way different than 5% on $500,000. The burden is way different, and what the population didn't understand is that our federal tax is progressive, right? We are one of only 7 states that has the flat tax. So there is some conversation with people like myself who say we need to revive that idea. We need to revive a middle class tax relief on the higher earners, and that would put money into that bucket, and then we could alleviate the property tax burden. That's really there's really no other solution, short of you all getting, I don't know, some businesses in, and then the business will say, well, we're not going to come unless you give us a tax. The record, there you go. the bear's coming out. So yeah, it's like that's really what it's about. It's not rocket science, and it's, like I said, it's that factor. And there's no magic money, people, and you all have been doing an amazing job with what you have. So, are there any other questions?
Thank you. I guess I just want to add my voice to Jason's to say your advocacy. I mean, this is like the third rail, the elephant in the room, but until, we could develop, I think we figured this out because the mayor came and talked to us about undeveloped property in our district boundaries. To your point, like Medline, yay, Gray's Lake, it doesn't have any impact on us,
Or
right?
Jewel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we figured, I think, even if we developed every single acre left in our boundaries, it would really not, it would be like a drop in the bucket. Mm-hmm. And so you're absolutely right that until we fix it, we and other districts that are underfunded I call it, we're just scrambling, we're fighting over scraps, you know? And so just always appreciate your advocacy for, we've got to be courageous enough in Springfield to take another bite at that apple, in my opinion. So appreciate your like-mindedness on that.
And there are others.
Yes, yeah, we're not the only one. Oh, good. You're not the only one.
I'm-
Neither are
I'm
we.
not. And I've been I'm an organizer, so I'm trying to get others to.
Yeah, I mean, it's
to
equity
understand that.
for students, but it's also, we have a teacher shortage. We need to be able to, pay teachers in this state to work in all districts. And, there's so many things that tracks, all kinds of things.
Well,
that are
you
in line.
bring up a really great point. I taught with a first grade teacher, and she said to me, I just found out that I can't retire till I'm 70. She's like, I don't, because the tier 2, that used to be the benefit of teaching. You had a low salary, but you had your decent pension, you served your community. And even that, it's like, okay, do you really want to be teaching first grade when you're 70? I don't know. Touche.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Senator.
so
Really
again,
appreciate
let me know
you.
how I can help. I'm here to help. I'm here to serve all of you as administrators of the school district, and please reach out, okay?
Thank you so
And
much.
I think most of you have my personal cell, so.
We know where to find you. Okay. All right, we are on to board reports, and I'm going to start to my left with Ms. Nash. Board reports.
Good evening. It feels so nice to come this way more often. It's a lot of real estate.
My predecessor.
I'm pretty lightweight this evening. I just want to remind our board colleagues, just because this is going to be our last board meeting before the event, that we are, our board colleague Jessica Albert and I are organizers in partnership with the Grayslake Area Public Library, as well as the Grayslake Heritage Center and Museum, to host a Juneteenth celebration Freedom Walk here in Grayslake, beginning at the library, over at the library on 100 Library Lane at 5 p.m. on Monday, June 19th. So I hope that you all can come out, bring your families. We have planned activities, live entertainment. It's really going to be a fun family event that's going to be educational in nature as well. And so really excited about the partnership with Mrs. Albert to bring this together for our community, and just super excited. So feel free to reach out to any one of us for additional questions and concerns, as I know that you would, not concerns, but any questions or ways that you can get involved. Jessica or I are more than happy to help. Thank you.
I just want to say another congratulations to our recent 8th grade graduates. It was a really beautiful ceremony on Sunday. And also, was it just a week ago? Gosh. The end of school, there was the Dog and Suds night out. It seems like it was months ago, but it was only a week ago. But it was a lot of fun, and so just thanking the staff and parents who came out for that night. And that's it from me tonight.
My only report is to remind everybody that Grayslake Pride is Sunday at noon. I know I said 11, and then when I got the confirmation, it was noon. If you already signed up to walk with D46, we're excited about that. You should have received a confirmation email. If you haven't signed up, we're actually full. But we encourage everyone to come out and watch the parade, or there's also, if you go to social media and look for Grayslake PFLAG, there is a link to volunteer as well. So I hope to see you all out there.
I'm sorry, I failed to omit an update. May I amend my board report?
Always.
Okay. I also want to share that the Community Resource Fair will be taking place this Saturday between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. over at the Grayslake Area Library in the parking lot. So there'll be vendors set up with their respective tables to hand out information and different resources to support our community, as well as some fun activities for the children. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with Dr. Diaz, who will share information about our summer programs that have begun for our students.
Yeah, today was our third day of a very successful summer school. We have 3 programs that are running congruently at Park Campus. We have Bridges, which is Title I, focused a lot on numeracy and literacy. Then we have ESY, Extended School Year, and then Adelante. So we have a really full school. We have teachers are really excited. Students are attending high participation, and they run until Monday through Thursday until June 29th. And it's just going very, very well. And then we have Jumpstart that will begin July 31st through August 10th.
Thank you. I echo, excuse me, I echo Mrs. Braden's comments about graduation. Really was a wonderful day. The weather was, I'm sorry, Mrs. Albert's comments. I know you were thinking positive things about graduation. It was a beautiful day, and the team did a wonderful job of organizing it, so thank you so much to all of our administrators and teachers who put quite a lot of time into making that day special for everyone. And most importantly, congratulations to our graduates and their families. And finally, I wanted just to share some excitement. You've heard at this board table and other places as well a lot of conversation about the difference in our different schools regarding what kind of outdoor spaces we have available for students, outdoor learning, outdoor classrooms, if you will. And so today I just want to share some photos about something that happened on the very last day of school a week ago. So if you can, yeah, keep it going. Thank you. So Avon Center school students worked during their recess on the very last day of school to help beautify their school by planting flowers and decorating rocks in their new garden space. So we are so grateful to second grade teacher Allison Wahlberg, who applied for a grant through Open Lands for the flowers. DK Organics donated the soil, Lurvy donated the rocks, and the PTF parent volunteers assisted in making Avon look fantastic. And I also need to call out Annie Schultz, one of our teachers, who really was very key in this project. So we're just going to show you a few photos of just a start for Avon. You can go ahead and just move through them. Thanks, Brandon. A start for Avon being able to have an outdoor learning space because our students are learning how to grow plants. I sat with some parents who talked about their ideas for the future. We have, I believe, some timber coming in, thank you, to do some other things. So we're really excited for this start, and I thought you'd want to see it. And that's it for the superintendent's report.
All right, we are to our consent agenda, and I would ask for a motion to approve our consent agenda items. Do I need to list them, or is it just consent agenda? Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
All right, we are moving to action items. Our first action tonight is a motion to approve the CLIC workers' compensation renewal.
Okay.
We'll do the motion and then
Sure.
you can give the update.
So moved.
Sorry,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Hi. Okay, each year the district receives a renewal for workers' compensation insurance coverage. That's from CLIC. And the district is a member with another 149 members. It's administered by Gallagher. And just over a week ago, we received a 3.5% decrease from last year's premium, which is a great renewal with no losses of coverage, and we recommend to the board for approval.
Any questions?
Yeah, the 3.5% decrease, right? That's just anomalous to everything that we've ever been, that's been put in front of us, right? Everything's going up,
Yeah, I was
up,
shocked
up.
as well.
Is,
I was like, wow.
you say no, absolutely no loss in coverage levels. Is this predicated on prior use? Is there anything driving the decrease other than we got lucky?
It's based on our payroll. So every year we send a certified payroll to to Click, and which is certified by our auditors. I can't make it up. I have to give it to Miller Cooper. They sign off on it, and then they look at our experience. And so it's two factors. It's the amount of people insured on the district's payroll, and it's basically an insurance factor, which is an actuarial factor based on the amount of on a 3 or 5 year factor of the amount of accidents we've had. So if we've had a bad year, it drops off on that 3 or 5 year factor, which we had in the previous. We've had some pretty worse years, and another good year just slightly reduces it. So that's a big component of the renewal. And then just based on how the cooperative is trending, if they get a really nice renewal on behalf of the 149, we benefit from that as well. So it's a combination of those two things.
Thank you.
Okay. Weedman, excuse me, Weedman,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Albert.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve the Click Property Casualty Insurance renewal. And I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's me again. Okay, so this one's 9.9%, which was a little bit more realistic in terms of what we're seeing in purchase services. It also includes lots of various, workers' comp is pretty simple. It's based on what I just talked about. There's lots and lots and lots of different renewals which are part of the second renewal, which is property casualty insurance. It also includes cybersecurity, and includes fiduciary board insurance, which didn't change. So total difference was 9.9%, which in the market, people are seeing greater increases than that, and includes no losses of coverage, which is good. So we're recommending this for approval as well.
Questions before we vote? Okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
I need a motion to now approve the student activity fees for 2023, 2024.
So moved.
I'll second.
We talked about this at the last meeting, which was for discussion. We brought it back, I think, 5, 6 times. I'm not quite sure. Let's count. But we made a recommendation on the specific action this evening from the administration was to not change the fees, and that is for your approval this evening.
Okay. Albert,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, a motion to approve the K-8 Science Resource Twig Science.
I'll make that motion.
I will second.
Well, at our last board meeting, Mrs. Gluck did a beautiful presentation for all of you about this resource. I don't think she's received any questions from any of you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
We're good? Okay, no worries. All right, next, I need a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement regarding disbursement of expenditures for the School-Based Health Services Program 2022-37-004 with the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services.
Okay, we received an intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, from the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services, HFS. Sorry, it's a lot of acronyms. It is a standard agreement between all government agencies that work with HFS. and we require this to receive reimbursement of expenditures from the agency, specifically Medicaid. The administration recommends approval of the proposed IGA this evening to become effective immediately to ensure there's no interruption of billing and reimbursement.
We need a motion before we can vote, though.
I have a question, though.
Let's do the motion and
Okay,
then
okay.
questions. Do you want to make the motion then?
Oh, sure, I can.
And I'll
make a
second it,
motion,
and then
sorry.
you can ask that. Go for it.
I was confused by the second bullet on the first page.
Do you mean in the memo or the
In the
IGA?
memo,
Okay,
sorry.
yep.
Yeah, I don't know if, I'm just confused by it and wanted someone to clarify that, please.
Okay, I'll go through all three.
It looks like there's a typo in it, and I think that's probably why. It says HFS shall submit the district's reimbursement. Is that what's confusing you? Yeah. What was that meant to say?
So HFS submits them to the federal government on our behalf through, Heather, please help me out. What's they called?
PNG does
Thank
our.
you so much.
yeah.
Thank you. Through that outsourced arrangement for us to be able to receive those reimbursements.
I'm wondering if the word certain is just somehow accidentally inserted.
I
Should
think
it
the word
say
of should be after certain. Certain of.
shall submit certain of the?
I
So
took this
just-
from the IGA, so I hope that's right. Just
It's
saying.
a standard
It's a standard form.
Some historical context, we used to have to receive parental consent annually to submit for billing. So this is an attempt to remove that barrier because that's already done through our free and reduced process. So it allows us to no longer have to do that. We should be able to capture some more funds for our services that we are providing.
I think what people are saying is that we don't quite understand what that language is saying.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I'll peek and see in the agreement.
Yeah. Because I'm not catching it either right now.
Is this something that's gonna need to be done annually, or is this a
No,
one-time
this
deal?
is one time, I believe. And if they send us a new one, probably within 5 years, I would guess. Usual an IGA would last for 5 years.
So you're not obviously voting on the memo, you're voting on the document, right? Let's remember that, so.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Do we have a sense, I appreciate Dr. Lorenzo, the added context, that was helpful. Do we have a sense for how much money we weren't capturing by way of needing to go through the parents as opposed to now this IGA?
I don't really have that value. It's just not something I've tracked.
Okay.
It would probably take some work to
Okay.
try to guesstimate that. And I failed to mention that the way we receive our funds is each of the providers, the approved providers, so like occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers, nursing services, they have to actually go in and log their billing hours, and then we receive funds for their actual provided service hours for students that are under this category.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nash,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Finally, I need a motion to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Grays Lake Federation of Teachers and the Board of Education.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so I'm going to speak to that one. So thank you. Brandon has put a chart up. I want to explain first what this is all about. As we know, we are in a significant staffing shortage. Very difficult to hire the right teachers into the right positions right now, and particularly experienced teachers, and particularly teachers in hard-to-fill positions already, right? So one of the conversations that we've been having is that our past practice for quite a while has been that when we hire in new teachers who have experience, we cap the level of experience that we'll pay for at 8 years. So if a teacher comes to us with, say, 10 years of experience, we will pay for 8 years of those experience. And that's a very common practice in school districts. School districts vary in terms of how many years they'll give. Some give 5, some will do something like, we'll give you full credit for your first 5 years, and then we'll give you half credit for every year beyond. There's all kinds of ways to slice that up. What we've done is 8 years. So we went to, the administration went to the teachers union and said, this isn't working right now because we no longer have so many people coming out of school. We are needing to find more experienced people, and they're not wanting to come when we are cutting the amount of experience that we'll give credit for. So the union understood that, and they were eager to talk with us about making that change. So we all sat down, that was Mr. Wildman and Mr. Wold, Dr. Wold and me, and also Mrs. Gluck. We sat down with our union leadership to engage in some interest-based bargaining. Boyd, you all know interest-based bargaining because we all engaged in it last summer and last spring as well to come up with the contract that we have now. We agreed on some important interests, one being that we could hire the right, best people for the positions to do the best for our students, right? Another was that we don't want to lose the staff that we have. And a third was that we didn't want people to come in the door and then back right out the door again. And I say that because some of the options that we came up with might have enticed people to come, but might not have kept them here for very long. So ultimately, after many, many hours of conversation and generating quite a few options, excuse me, we came up with a memorandum of understanding that you have today, and I think, Board, you all have a copy of it. So here's the concept. We're in agreement that through the end of this current contract, we would be able to break with past practice and be able to hire in new staff and give them their full years of experience. And that would not trigger an article that is in our current contract that talks about new people being hired in cannot make more than people who already work here that have similar experience. So this wouldn't trigger that. However, we also wanted to do something for existing staff because we know that we have staff members who have been hired at below their years of experience. And so that kind of deals with that second interest that we talked about of not losing people. We wanted to honor people that have been hired over the past few years with a lot of experience that didn't get credit for all of it. And we don't want them to leave, right? We want them to feel valued. So ultimately what we came up with was a variable to be used. And so we're treating people who have been here for 4 years, for the past 4 years, in different ways. So we're going to walk through that. I want to start by explaining that we only were looking back for 4 years. And we did that. There was some logic to it because we did negotiate a teacher's contract 4 years ago. So we're just capturing those folks that we've hired since that last contract for the past 4 years. And so now I'm going to go to the chart, and I have to look at it. So we actually did a math equation, and that's what you're looking at now. So we're going to talk about a teacher, a mythical teacher, right, that was hired for the 22-23 school year. And we start by looking at what that person would be expecting to get in compensation and salary this upcoming school year. That would be last year's school salary, their 22-23 salary, plus that 6% that's a part of their the negotiated contract when we did our interest-based bargaining last. So that will be, we're going to call that A, excuse me. Then we're going to pull out our hiring matrix and imagine that that person was being hired in new at their actual years of experience, not the limit that we gave them years ago, not built on what they are expecting to get from last year's salary, but just if we hired them in new, what would they be getting at their full years of experience? So that's B, right? So then we have a difference, B minus A. And that person who was hired last year is going to get 50% of that difference added to his or her salary, right? So instead of just getting A, what their anticipated salary would have been for next year. They're going to get A plus 50% of B minus A. That's what we'd be doing for next year. Before I go in, for people who we hired last year who didn't get their full years of experience. Before I go on to some other years, are there any questions about that? I did used to teach math, by the way, just so you know. Okay.
Do we know what N is for each of these students? No, that's serious. What the number of people?
Yes.
22. For all of the options, it's 22 teachers.
Yes, yeah.
The N is 20, okay.
They're 20, yes, exactly. They're 22 teachers, yeah.
I can give you each line if you'd like.
Yes. All right, so then we looked at the people who were hired 2 years ago, and it's the same idea, but those folks would be getting 60% of B minus A added to the salary they were expecting for this year. And then folks who've been hired 3 years or 4 years ago, our conversation with the union, and we appreciate the union's position on this, was that those folks have stayed, right? They were hired in below their years of experience, many of them well below their years of experience, and then they've stuck with us. They have not left, and so we want to honor that. So those folks would get A, right, plus 75% of B minus A. So administration was comfortable with this MOU, and the union was comfortable with this MOU as well. So questions or comments?
So this table describes a one-time adjustment that we'll never have to do again, right? It just,
Correct.
after this year, then their raises every year will be dictated by the then-going contract.
Correct, that is correct.
Okay. So it's not an administrative nightmare going forward?
No, mm-mm.
Okay.
Just a small one this summer, but we've got it under control. Yeah, 22 people, and it's 22. Mhm.
I just appreciate the interest-based bargaining approach and, just the partnership between the administration and the union leadership to get this done. So it's great.
Thank you.
So he asked what to solve for N. I'm going to solve for X. What is the end result of the cost?
Sure, we do have that as well. So we want to make sure we're talking about a cost that is above what we would already be spending on these people's raises. That's important to know, right? One moment.
We have to go back and double check everything, but based off our current equations, about $50,000 above what we had anticipated paying for a regular salary next year.
Okay.
Seems like a small price to pay to keep talented, dedicated teachers in our employment. Thank you.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
It's me. We are done with our action items, and we have no unfinished business for tonight's meeting, so we are on to new business and a discussion on board policies.
All right. So we're going to start by talking about a whole group of policies together. Dr. Woke is going to explain a new law that I think is really important for the board to hear about anyway, even if we didn't have new policies coming from it, or revised policies. So he's going to explain about that, and then I think it'll be pretty easy to just talk about, and all of these policies are affected. And then we have some other policies to talk about as well.
Sure. So thank you very much. So for the first 7 policies that we'll be looking at tonight, actually, we've talked about this at very minimal, but faith's law. These first 7 policies are in regards to faith's law. Faith's law was signed into law on December 3rd of 2021, with portions of the law taking effect on July 1 of 22, with other portions taking effect here on July 1 of 23, so just a couple weeks from now. Faith's law expands the criminal definition of grooming beyond just electronic communications to include written communications and acts committed in person. The law also makes it clear that mandated reporters must report suspected grooming to DCFS under the Abused and Neglected Child Reporting Act. FACE law also adds new requirements for schools to provide notification of policies pertaining to sexual misconduct and to complete employment history reviews, which I will refer to as EHRs because that's a lot. The EHRs will require all new employees to the district to provide all of their past employment where they supervised minors, and the districts will need to then to contact those former employers to confirm that there was no history of sexual misconduct. So this is a law that, like I said, passed a while ago. It goes into effect for all new employees hired after July 1 of 23. We'll have to make postings about this, letting individuals or letting the community know. And then any new employee that is hired on July 1 or after, we have to do these EHRs for. And I shared earlier that so I, at the age of 14, worked for the Crystal Lake Park District coaching T-ball. I'm going to have to write on my EHR form that this is a job I worked at, and now a district will then have to go and request information from that park district from 30 years ago about if there was any misconduct during that time. So,
Just to clarify, because I don't want people to think that all of our employees have to
no,
start going
new to
doing
the
it.
district.
New to the district. So that's only if he would leave
If
us,
I were
which
to
he's
leave
not
and
going to
go-
do. So there you go.
Yeah, yes. And come back and then, but yes, so we're actually partnering with a company that is doing this in other states. So it's a lot of burden, but it's going to help to keep our students safe.
So all of these first, 9 policies, all the way down to abuse and or everything. There's a
Yeah,
few things. These are
there's
not in the
7.
same order, but a number of these policies.
Yeah, no, it's the first 7.
First 7, okay, are about that. Any questions about that? Those, okay. So I'm actually going to ask the board members who were present at the policy committee meeting. I was not planning to go through each of the other policies, except for the 2 that we pulled out for discussion of waiver of student fees and student behavior that we have had some conversation about. Everything else was really legal updates, small language changes. Is there anything that any of you who were present want me to go through? Okay. Okay, so we'll go to waiver of student fees. So this kind of works in concert with what Mr. Wildman was talking about earlier, that we've brought forth conversation about our student fees many times, and the last time we did that, or the last conversation at the last board meeting, when we were recommending that the student fees not be changed, and you've just approved that, so thank you for that. We also touched on the conversation that the board has returned to many times, which was whether or not the board, should be waiving student activity fees for students who are eligible for free or reduced meals. There are many school districts that do that. Our school district doesn't do that, and we've been talking about that. So you'll remember that you had directed us to collect data on the cost of doing that, and which would really mean funds that we wouldn't be capturing from families if we were waiving those fees, and if our student activity involvement from students who do qualify for free or reduced lunch stayed the same. So we gave that to you last time, and then we talked about it in the policy committee meeting today. Board members who are present and or Chris, do you want me just to keep going about what okay. So the conversation at the table, it almost felt like a kind of a sad conversation, because what folks were talking about is, as much as the board would like to waive those student fees for students who do have those kinds of hardships and are, and are eligible for free and reduced lunch, this may not be the time for the board to make such a decision, based on what we know about the budget that Mr. Wildman's going to be presenting soon, and the deficit that we have in front of us, this could be a difficult time to do that. So keeping in mind, and I used the word hardship before, but actually remember, please, that we do also have a hardship waiver that families can apply for, but they have to apply. So that's different from just a blanket waive for anybody who qualifies for those free or reduced meals. So what we talked about doing is that next year, we bring it up again. We'll just keep bringing this to the table. So when we bring student fees to you again next year, that might be another time for a conversation. So that's what we were thinking about. Chris, do you want to add anything to that? Anybody from the policy meeting want to add anything to that? Okay.
I would just say that we also acknowledged, like, that this was something we aspire to and want to keep revisiting, as Dr. Glickman said, and we also just wanted to acknowledge that we have done, one thing that we did put in place that we've been talking about for a couple of years is the donation button. And so, you know, if every year we can get a little closer, I think that's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. And then finally, I wanted to talk about our student behavior policy, policy 7190. So every year I am required to pull together a committee of teachers and parent guardians to talk about our student behavior policy and then bring to you any recommendations that that committee has. So we did meet in May, and so what I'm sharing with you and the policy revisions that you see before you come from a kind of a combination of ideas that people who are on the committee brought up ahead of time, which we then brought to our attorneys for some discussion, then really had robust conversation at the table, at the committee meeting, and then back to the attorneys for kind of finalizing that. So we talked about a lot of things, many of which didn't result in recommendations for policy change. I'm just going to walk you through, excuse me, all of the policy changes that were recommended for this. I'm going to do this one a little slowly because people care a lot about student behavior, right? So I want to make sure everyone understands these changes. So the first two recommended changes are under the heading of prohibited student conduct. And so it's actually number 10. And I'm just going to read aloud because we're not displaying anything right now. So I'm just going to read aloud what the original policy says, or what the policy that currently is on our book says. One of the prohibited student behaviors is engaging in any sexual activity, including without limitation, offensive touching, sexual harassment, indecent exposure, including mooning, and sexual assault. This does not include the non-disruptive expression of gender or sexual orientation or preference or display of affection during the non-instructional time. The conversation we had at the table was about that whole last part about what this does not include. Folks in that discipline committee felt that it was very odd that pulled out was even the fact that expression of gender or sexual orientation or preference was even mentioned in here, because that has nothing to do at all with engaging in sexual activity. So folks at the table in the committee wanted that pulled out, just because it doesn't apply. It doesn't make any sense in that part of the policy, and our attorneys agreed with that and thought that that made a lot of sense to pull that out. So that's one of the recommendations. The other one was also very interesting. Again, not including display of affection during non-instructional time. That makes sense to some extent, but one of the things we see with our older learners is that without some standards, there might be a lot of display of affection during non-instructional time. And that can make for an uncomfortable situation for a lot of people. So we wanted our schools to be able to have the ability to put some standards in place and to let students know that some things in the hallways are not appropriate. And so our attorneys just recommended we take that entire part out so that our schools do have the ability to deal with that issue. So any questions about that recommendation from the committee? Okay. Then number 14 is a whole section about children not calling emergency responders such as 911 or signaling or setting off an alarm unless there is a real emergency, right? That makes sense. We don't want kids calling 911 if nothing's going on. So there was a whole list of reasons that, that sometimes emergencies are called. One of those was indicating the presence of a bomb or explosive device, and someone recommended, shouldn't we put firearms in there? Don't we also want kids not to be allowed to call 911 to say there's a gun if there isn't? So we agreed with that. We talked with our attorneys, and they agreed that that made sense to be added. Okay. The last one was really a very interesting and deep philosophical conversation about restorative measures, and how, although this is a discipline policy, and therefore we need to be able to say what you can't do and what might happen if you do it, right? That's what's in this policy. It's also important to send the message that restorative measures are also important, that we have to teach our children that there are ways to reconnect with others in the school, to build trust with the people that they've harmed, and to reestablish themselves after they've made a mistake. And so we didn't want this entire policy just to be about being punitive. We also wanted to bring that concept to the forefront. So there's some language added. It's really, it's just adding a phrase about under disciplinary measures that says including restorative measures as defined below. And then when you scroll on down below, there's an entire paragraph about what that really means. That paragraph actually already exists in another one of our policies. So we didn't create language, we just pulled it, we copied it from another one of the policies where it also fits and added it here to make it clearer and to make sure that we are forwarding that concept of the importance of restorative measures. So that's what came from that committee this time. Any questions or comments about that?
I have a question, and really it's like a handoff question to Dr. Lorenzo. As it pertains to restorative practices, I just wanted to get your perspective, being our subject matter expert on this topic, if you had a perspective on this policy update.
So my personal professional opinion is it's extremely important to have those layers, both for your school community, your staff community, and for the student who's made a mistake. But it's also important to protect those that may be victims of a mistake, their right to not participate in restorative actions with the offender, for lack of better words. So being really sensitive to the needs of both people who are impacted by poor decision making. Does that answer your question?
It does, and,
Okay.
and what I think I'm picking up on the tea leaves is that even though we have these restorative measures in place, which makes sense, right? That depending on what that restorative measure is, the victim can always opt out.
That's right.
Okay.
And keep in mind, with the adoption of Senate Bill 100, there is a layer built in not only for progressive discipline, but the requirement of intervention to both students who are the recipients of a poor decision as well as the person who's receiving a consequence for something. So that's layered into that law as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I think we are going to move on to the fiscal 23-24 tentative budget.
Okay, this is the tentative budget presentation of CCSD 46 for the upcoming school year. Next slide, please. The district's mission: empowering learners, creating equity, cultivating community. Next slide, please. We're guided by a strategic plan. It's the backbone of any good school district. And as you can see, we have board policy, expanding, clarifying, reviewing financial practices, as well as 25 to 30% board policy for colon 20, which we're all very familiar with. I use that very often in a lot of my presentations. Next slide, please. So here's the timeline of the budget. This, we've already presented we've discussed the preliminary budget. We didn't present, we just talked a little bit about it. You saw the headline number. Today we're actually presenting it as a formal presentation. After today, it will be publicly available for anybody, and then we'll have the public hearing on August 17th, which will include any changes from between the tentative through to the public, and then will be filed as per the state's deadline on September 30th. I pulled this quote. It's from the 1962 State of the Union. We've got 2 roofs being built right now, so I thought it was really good because the sun is shining and we've got work happening in 2 of our buildings. Okay, so what has changed since May 17th? I can tell you what is in the budget and what isn't in the budget. So we've just voted on the CLICS renewals, put those numbers in. I did not put the MOU numbers in, so that will be an additional change that will go into the final. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked a little bit about this earlier, about our financial situation. We're a Tier 1 district for the purposes of EBF. We are currently 65-66% adequately funded with an adequacy gap of $17 million. So it's difficult for Tier 1 districts to do what Tier 4 districts can also do. A Tier 4 district is 100% funded. We're all very aware of these numbers. I've talked about them a lot. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that I've been looking on is kind of looking at our adequacy history, and I was amazed to find out that the district was actually a Tier 2 district back in 2018 when we were at 65% adequacy. So we have grown 1% in 5 years. So when we start to think and have conversations about this, when are we going to move, and when are we going to move into the second tier? And we've only moved 1% in 5 years. That's because the $350 million that we mentioned earlier isn't enough to make up the gap for all the different increases that we have as a school district. So just want you to remember that again. And obviously, you know, we're limited by PTEL, Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, which is CPI, the lesser of CPI 5%, and we've had CPI 5% as limited for the last 2 years. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm showing you a structural deficit. This is what was presented. We've got 3 lines there. One of them is our old 25% line, which we're all very familiar with. We've got our November line, which was my last time I presented a financial projection. And we have the updated line, which shows just the change in the projection using this updated budget number and then transferring those numbers through for the next 5 years. So after this is presented, after this is finalized and we have an updated budget, I will go through all separate assumptions again in November at another finance committee, and we'll have a line that should look pretty similar to this, but it won't look exact. This is my approximation using last year's information, updating it for this year's budget number, but it should look pretty similar to that. As you can see, we have that crossing of the 25% in fiscal year 25. Next slide, please. Again, here is the UBF increases, and I just want to show you that those increases are quite substantial in dollar terms. So this is a base funding amount. So the 2018 amount is what I had to recreate using the old GSA and the mandated categorical grants. And that's my estimate in 2023-24, which is just close to $18 million. There was 1 year I didn't have an increase, which was during COVID, and a substantial amount, but not moving that adequacy percentage. Next slide, please. And what do we get for that? We are still have excellent schools. We can be proud of what we accomplish with what we have. And this is from the most updated Illinois Report Card. So this is the all funds budget. So the number looks a little bit bigger than 3.4 million because we do have anticipated amount of capital, which we have. We have we have sold these bonds. We have put that aside, and that's part of the next presentation. So we have an all funds budget, which is a little bit bigger. That number is in the memo, and then we have the $3.4 million, which is our operating deficit. Slide, please. So what do we spend it on? 60, as we know, 60% comes from local taxpayers. We have the next biggest part is 31%, which is from EBF. And then we have our federal funding, which is 5%. So some of the things that make up that 5% are what we were just talking about earlier, the Medicaid billing, which is administrative outreach, and the fee-for-service reimbursement. That makes up, as well as IDEA and some of the other funding. So we're very familiar with the big part of the taxes, which is your property taxes you pay, and then the EBF, but the rest of it is federal. We're down from 8% because we don't have our ESSA funding. We had a large amount of ESSA over the last 2 years. That is, we will be finishing the final year of our ESSA ARP, and it will be no longer available to us. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more detailed than I've presented in the past, but it really shows where we're spending our money. 59% goes on staff and their benefits. Further 14% goes to purchase services. We know what that is. So all the contracts are bringing to. It's GSF to clean the buildings. It's Durham to transport our students. Arbor to feed our kids. And if you add up all those little numbers here, for the debt, it's 12%. So when we talk about where your tax bill is going, and we talk about the ability and the opportunity to be able to have a discussion about that with the community, 12% of your current taxes are going to pay for Madrona that was finished 20 years ago. Next slide, please. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because I've got a whole presentation after this, but these are the roofs we're talking about. That's the costs that were approved through our cooperative agreements, and that's the total of the building automation systems that we accelerated forward. You might recall during that timeline that we had several of them that were going to be purchased in years 3, but because of timing and cost, we wanted them to be purchased earlier. So that adds up to the building automation systems, all the buildings. Next slide, please. Okay, so I don't think that number's right, but I want to be really clear on this. The science curriculum, that's the 502,604. That's the amount that's coming out of. You add those two together, the 111,526. That's the total amount that we're paying for the science curriculum. That's what's been approved. We have our Chromebooks, which is a regular technology purchase that we need to memorialize as part of the budget. It's been part of the tech plan for the last 2 years right now. Moving away from using financing to purchase those Chromebooks. We're actually purchasing that right, which allows us to maintain them and to sell them back when they're past their useful life or when we're ready to replace them. We have our new security cameras at Park Campus. So that's the second school to actually have its new cameras put in place. We have our cable and access, which is a large amount of E-rate that we're actually doing this year. It's the net amount. We will get a large amount of reimbursement from that. And I wanted to show this as well. We have a new dishwasher GMS because it's part of our sustainability, because we want to be able to wash and actually have, not just constantly throw things away. So for that to happen, it's past its useful life. We've spent quite a lot of money on repairs over the last few years, so we're just going to be buying a new one. Next slide, please. So public display, we just talked about that earlier in the timeline. Update is necessary for any material changes. We have one. We obviously have the MOU, and if we have anything else that we bring forward, those changes will be made prior to the public hearing on August 17th. And as I just alluded to, the last 2 years I've done finance committees in November. I'd like to stick to that, to give the district, myself, and the business office time to prepare a financial presentation for you to bring back to you so you can see where we're at in our financial position going forward. And using any updated assumptions that we might have. So CPI will be a little bit closer to that December value, and that's always a big one, the CPI, what we use to estimate. Next slide. Any questions from what we've presented this evening versus changes from preliminary on May 17th?
I had a question,
Yes.
Mr. Wellman. So just really a clarifying question. So on the additional investment slide, I think it may be 2 slides back, when we see for the science resources, I know it was a little over 600K. When we're seeing a partial payment of a little north of 100K, is that also coming from the ESSER funding as well?
So there was various funding sources that was brought from. It was partly from this year's budget, because we're not in the new year yet. It's next year's budget. We have part of it coming from the Title III part of EBF, and then we have the remaining part coming from ESSA.
Okay.
And if there was a slide as part of the presentation that Mrs. Gluck made.
I just want to add.
Yep.
There we go. Just to answer also, if you're asking why does this say 502,604 rather than the 600, right? That's because of that some of it was spent out of this year's budget.
Correct.
So, right, so this slide doesn't show how we're paying for things, it just shows what are additional investments. And we only have a $500,000 investment in the 23-24 year for science curriculum because we already paid for the first $100,000 out of this year's budget.
This slide is only showing what the difference between 2023 and 24. Yeah, thank you. Exactly. Yeah.
This is just a long-term budget question. How much longer do we have to pay on the solar panels?
I think our final payment's November of 25. Then we got 3 more payments. So we'll own them very soon. My predecessor, Mary Welling, did a really good job on that, lining up the same debt payment time expiration with the bonds. So we should be, quote, debt-free. I know we've got the expiration of those, and we've talked other discussions about where that money might go, but technically it'll be in 2025. So they have the same redemption time.
And what's that annual cost?
The annual cost of the debt payment?
Yeah,
I could send it to you.
Just send it later.
Yeah, sure.
If you could just give it to the board so we know where we're at.
We don't receive, there's a difference between what we receive in our SREC funding and what we actually pay. We're not fully, that's why our debt service is decreasing, because we don't receive the exact amount, and then we do the transfer every year, which is a transfer resolution that you passed a few weeks ago.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Are we good? Okay.
I'm still here anyways.
Next is our 3-year priority capital update.
Is that it too? No? Yep. I think so. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Can somebody forward it to him? I can send it to you. It's in slides. There you go. Awesome. Okay. Coming soon, I promise. All right, promised you guys this several months ago that we were going to give you an update on the timeline. So we gave you a timeline update, I believe, in November, which was laying out the year 1, year 2, and year 3. This will go through an update for the timeline is in the board packet. I've got a memo with that too. And we'll go through some of the costs because you've not seen the costs in one place. Next slide, please. Mission. Biggest thing about this is that it's really about equity because this is about our buildings. All right, our old friends, strategic plan goals. I've added the facility one here because this is really about creating a comprehensive master facilities plan and being able to have it funded and both inside and outside the buildings, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put a little agenda in here. We're going to do a recap because this is the first time we're presenting this as one slide deck. An update on the costs, actual versus budget, and the next steps as we move forward into years 2 and 3. So this was presented in November and December of 2021. So Walden Train walked our buildings from June through August of 2021. They used an existing facilities plan from 2018-2019. So they had a really nice jumping off point because their architects were very familiar with our buildings. So a lot of escalation took place at that point, and they were able to just update a lot of costs because there wasn't a huge amount of changes in the buildings between 2018 and 21. So based on that assessment, the building envelope and indoor air quality systems of those two groups, recommendations were made to the board on September. Our friends came up with $36.7 million worth of work that needed to be accomplished over 10 years. We asked them to prioritize it over 3 years, and they came up with 15.7, which was too much because we don't have 15.7. Next slide, please. So we knew we had 9.2. So we did a prioritization ourselves and came up with 9.2. And this was the initial breakdown, 1.9 million, 4.1, and 3.2 in years 1, 2, in 3.2 in years 3. As you know, we've accelerated some of that BAS, some of the building automation systems, which were due to be in year 3 and now in year 2. But the total is still 9.2 million. This is the total by building. We have Avon, Frederick, GMS, so that all work is being done throughout the district. All buildings are having work done. And then we have, next slide please. We have Park Prairie View and then Woodview. So not a great picture there, that last one, but still totaling 9.2. So this was the initial starting point that we had in November and December when it was board approved. So this is what we came up with, those budgeted costs. Then we went ahead and sold the DSEB working cash bonds. And then that number stuck in my brain. It's $9,086,867. As you know, it was the day before war broke out. We got very lucky with our interest rate, and we received pretty close to what we wanted to get. We were looking at 9.1, 9.2. We just received just short of that. We have invested the money very wisely in Fifth Third. We've done a laddered approach, and we've received $243,000 by laddering that money out through March of 2023. So we have a total proceeds of income of just $9.3 million. So all that is in capital projects. What is earned in capital projects has to be put in capital projects, which is restricted funding. We can't spend it on anything else, which is good because we have significant facility needs, and we don't want to do that. We want to spend it on our buildings. So right from the start, we have proceeds and income above our original budget, which is a good place to start. All those are the original budget numbers, and they're kind of some of the shorthand that we came up with: exhaust fans, BAS, roofs. You're very familiar with all these things that we've been doing over the last 2 years. and that's a color coding by building. So next slide, please. So this is where we're at today. We have committed or expended $6.8 million. So that's the total costs that have been brought to the Board of Education. So that includes anything that's been bid, that includes anything that we've purchased through Train, through our state contract. It includes anything that we've put, any of the roofs that we've put through Tremco, which is the 2 roofs that are currently being worked on right now. So the remaining work from the original budget is $1.6 million. We have a favorable balance of $700,000, and that's the remaining work. So we do have a little bit of cushion based on what we received in total funding from the bond proceeds, plus the interest income, which is all in Fund 60. And there, the breakdown of what we initially discussed. We have exhaust fans at all the buildings outside of Avon and Frederick. We have sidewalk and concrete work at 2 of the buildings, and that's quite significant. So those of you who do remember reading that initial facilities report, you might recall that there was concrete work needed throughout the district, specifically at Park as well. And that number could grow. So if we choose to spend that additional money on concrete work, that might be an option. We have the roof at Avon, which is planned for year 3. We have a carpet at Meadowview, and then we have the fire doors, which were originally planned for GMS in the first year, but we didn't manage to do them. So that's a smaller project, which we got pushed into year 3. So next slide, please. So again, that favorability gives us a little bit of cushion against any escalation in any of these numbers. So one of the things that we should be thinking about is, how do we get bang for our dollar in terms of that concrete work and the sidewalks and anything else that we need to do? Do we wish to increase the scope of that, or do we wish to just put it for something else? So that's something that we could look at. We do also have a 10-year health, life, safety, which is pending, and that might be an option to use that favorability towards that if there's any projects which would be considered A projects, immediate projects that the district has to do within years 1, 2, and 3 of the 10-year health, life, safety that we could look at. So next slide, please. So the timeline, I'm not going to go through the whole timeline. It's in your board packets. It was presented on November 16th. We do have costs in there. I've put all the costs in there. And we do have all the projects which were moved forward from year 3 into year 2. And we do have updates for the projects of year 3, which all the things I just went through, which we'll be planning on finishing soon. Planning on having scheduled soon. So that's the next step, planning that year 3 work, which will be for the next summer, because we've already got 2 roofs up and running that we're done with the planning for this summer. We're now in the execution phase. And as Jason asked me many meetings ago, and I've not forgotten, create a list of years 4 and 5 projects, which I do wish to state is currently unfunded. So again, having a priority list of things that we would do on that initial 15.7 million minus the 9.2, which we're accomplishing, which would probably be those projects for years 4 and 5. So there would be the first projects that we would be looking at as part of any larger plan for the district in terms of funding through years 4 and 10. So that ends the presentation. Do you have any questions about the timeline or the slides this evening?
Do we know when we'll get the results of our health, life, safety?
They started walking the buildings in June 1st. And it usually takes several weeks and months for that work to be, the physical work to actually walk through and then to compile it. So I believe it's August we should be receiving that. And that will have hopefully a price tag with it, so we can start to look at prioritizing what are those A projects to be able to put them as part of the long-range plan.
Thank you, Mr. Wildman.
Thank you.
All right, we are down to topics for future agenda items.
Yep. Sorry. At our next meeting, we are looking at doing 2 reports for you. One is a communications update. We recently did a survey with our community about our communications methods, and so we'll be presenting that information to you along with everything else that we've done in the past year under communications, along with steps for the future. And then we're bringing a report about meeting student needs. And so in that report, we'll be talking about remediation and extension and also how we support our newcomers to the country. Excuse me. And then at this time, it looks like we just have one action item on that board meeting, which is policies, right? Going back to those policies. We doesn't look like we have any new business right now, but we'll see if that changes. In July, remember we have one board meeting in July. We'll be doing an update on our equity action, on our equity action plan. We will also do a district strategic goals update. So that's the, those maps that we keep showing you, right? So we'll be updating our work and sharing the plans for the future regarding that. And then Christy Miller had asked, at the last meeting, she asked about, did you want, she knew somebody, a contact who could do a sustainability materials presentation, and the board seemed to be interested in that. I don't know where that matter stands, but it's on my list of topics that might happen in July. And then the board had asked to have a discussion about how to possibly include students in board meetings. So that's for July, and that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments coming in? No. All right. We do need to go into closed session this evening, so if I could get a motion to do so. Also moved. I'll second. And we do not expect to come out of closed session and take any action this evening. So we will.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Nash. Aye. Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.